To teach is to touch a life forever. I am teacher Evelyn. I welcome you all to Science 8 online class. Our lesson for today is all about the interaction of organisms in their environment. So these presentations provide you with fun and meaningful opportunities for guided and independent learning at your own pace and time. You will be enabled to process the contents of the learning material while being an active learner. So this presentation is made for you to understand and appreciate how living organisms interact with their environment to sustain life. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. As you know, I am always excited to be with my students. And of course, you made me happy with your positive response through your performances in which I have already checked. So before we will proceed to our discussion, let me first read our learning objective for today's lesson. First is to describe the transfer of energy through trophic level, analyze the roles of organisms in the cycling of materials, explain how materials cycle in the ecosystem, and appreciate the role of the different organisms and value the importance of every materials found in our ecosystem and suggest ways to minimize human impact on the environment. Okay? Okay. So energy from the sun is ultimately all the energy needed by all organisms to survive. So again, the energy from the sun ultimately supplies all energy needed by all organisms to survive. Now, for the transformation of energy, there are two interconnected factors that sustain life. Our life on Earth is sustained in combination of two interacted factors. One is the one-way flow of energy from the sun. So the one-way flow of energy from the sun and the cycling nutrients which is the second one. So this high quality energy from the sun flows through living organism as low quality energy via feeding interaction. So energy is being converted from one form to the next, but ultimately is reduced as heat as governed by the law of thermodynamics. Okay? So, the cycling nutrients through parts of the biosphere. This is the second interconnected factors that is important in sustaining life of the organism. Okay? Now, we have the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the carbon cycle, and the water cycle. Okay, so this cycling of nutrients to parts of the biosphere is an important component of living things. Okay, so now let's move on to the ecological roles of organism in energy transfer. So a way to study how energy flows into the ecosystem is by examining the interaction of organisms within an ecosystem. So organisms are categorized on how they obtain energy from the environment. Okay, now we have the autotrophs, or otherwise known as the producers. Autotrophs are producers which are mainly green plants on land that manufacture their own food. Okay? So in aquatic environments, certain microorganisms such as the phytoplankton are the main producers. So they are the only organisms that convert radiant energy from the sun into chemical energy and store it in their food molecules during photosynthesis. Okay? So producers affect the lives of other organisms because they are at the beginning of food chain. So they provide food substances, energy, and oxygen for other organisms in the food chain. Okay, plants get energy through photosynthesis, and plants take up carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight, and thus will yield glucose and oxygen for the use of the animals. Okay? Okay, for the next we have the consumers, or otherwise known as heterotrophs. So organisms that cannot make their own food and depend on producers for food and energy. Okay? So consumers obtain their energy directly or indirectly from the producers. So producers again are the green plants. So there are kinds of heterotrophs. So you have herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and the scavengers. Now, for plant eaters that feed directly on plants, okay, we have here an example of herbivores is the giraffe. Also the rabbit, the locust, no, they are eating plants only. So for carnivores, such as this, you have the lion, you also have the wolves, the snakes. So they are the animals that eat flesh, or they are called the carnivores. Okay? So, for organisms that eat both plant and animals, like humans also, are said to be omnivores, meaning both plants and animals they take. So consumers that feed on dead bodies or dead animals are also known as the scavengers. Okay. So now for the decomposers. So decomposers, after living things died, certain small organisms use dead matter for food, right? So detribores or the decomposers are organisms that eat fragments of dead organic matter and return them as nutrients to enrich the soil. Okay? So they are the consumers that release nutrients, bacteria and fungi. So what you can see here, you have the worms, insects. So these are examples of decomposers. So they are microorganisms, no, such as bacteria and fungi that break down the dead bodies of organisms into simpler substances to enable materials locked up in them and to be returned to the physical environment. And what happened to this? Okay, so once it decomposed, no, the dead body decomposed, then what happened? Of course, this will be used again by green plants. So, for fertilizer. So, without them, this decomposer, the world will be filled with plant and animals or animal waste, dead bodies, and organic garbage. So, this bacteria, fungi, or this microorganism is also a vital uh, components in this uh, ecological roles of organisms. So they play an important role in the decaying materials. Okay, so now we have here the diagram for the feeding interaction or the cycle, which is what we call the food chain. So this feeding interaction, all organisms need energy to survive. So the energy in a community of organisms is passed from one organism to another as a food. So that is why it is called a food chain. It is a way of describing the flow of energy and food through a community. So class, try to follow the arrows because arrows are used to show the direction in which the energy flows. So each stage in a food chain is what we known as the trophic level. Okay? Now, this is the food chain in the energy relationship in a grassland community. So again, there are arrows there used to show the direction. So please try to follow the direction of the arrow. So for the red, that is the energy, and for the green, that is the nutrients. Okay, now we have here a figure that shows a simplified food web in a marine environment. This is microscopic algae serve as the producers which are eaten by zooplankton. Zooplankton in turn are eaten by small fish and other marine organisms. So as what I have told you earlier that this is the only producers in which you can see in the ocean, the zooplankton. So this is eaten by small fish and other marine organisms found in the ocean. Okay? So try to so students, please be guided with the connection. No? Please follow the arrows because that is somehow guide you to the direction where it is connected or going through the next. Okay, so now we have the flow of food, and this food web is from producers to consumers and to decomposer. Okay, class, game time muna tayo, ha? Para hindi naman kayo makatulog. I have here prepared few questions for you. So, from the lesson or from the discussion, I would like to ask how far have you gone or how far did you understand about the role of organisms in the environment? Now, the question is, without decomposers, will producers and consumers stay alive, and why? Oh, by the way, write your answer in your notebook. So I will give you time, like one minute, I think, or 2 minutes will do. Okay, so for the second question is, without producers, will consumers stay alive, and why? Okay, so 2 minutes I think is enough for that. Questions? Okay, done. Now, for question number one, without decomposers, will producers and consumers stay alive, and why? So the answer is no. And why? Without the decomposers that provides the nutrients for plants, then both consumers and producers won't be alive. Okay? Then for question number two, without producers, will consumers stay alive, and why? Okay, the answer is no, because consumers are just dependent to the producers. And the main producers are the plant. So, walang kakainin si consumers pag wala si producers. Then, how can consumer get nutrients without the producers? So, definitely, both answer for 1 and 2 are no. Okay? So, now who got the correct answers for both? Yay! Very good. Okay, class. Showing you the energy flow and trophic level diagram. So try to look at the figure. Please try to observe also the figure as it goes up. Okay? So the base of the pyramid represents the producers. Okay? So this is the level with the greatest amount of energy. So it is represented by the largest area of the pyramid. So again, it is the producers that serves as the largest area of the pyramid. So 10,000 kilocalories. Okay? So therefore, the pyramid of energy is always broad at the base and narrow toward the apex. So you have here the primary consumers, then the secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. So from 10,000, it goes to 1,110 calories. Okay? So given these concepts, Which do you think is more energy efficient? A vegetarian diet or a meat-based diet? Okay? Now, we have also here another diagram represent a biomass pyramid that compares the biomass of a different trophic levels within an ecosystem. It shows that mass of producers are needed to support primary consumers. The mass of primary consumers required to support the secondary consumers, so on and so forth. So as what I have told you in the previous slide that it is usually the producer, no, the producer, the baseline, which has the broad and narrow, the broad and followed by the narrow as it goes towards the apex. Okay? So this is the distribution of the energy as it goes to the apex. Game time! Game pa ba kayo? I know you are. Kasi malakas yung energy niyo, di ba? So anyway, only two questions in which I have prepared. So this is simple. So for question number 1, to which group of organisms do you belong? And for question number 2, to which trophic level do you occupy? So 1 minute for this to answer. Please write your answer on your notebook. Okay? Okay, time is up. So the answer for number 1, to which group of organisms do you belong? Okay, we belong in the kingdom Animalia. We are mammals, right? Okay, so we belong in kingdom Animalia class. Then for question number 2, which trophic level do you occupy? Okay, next come the omnivores that eat a mixture of plants and animals. So, humans rank with a trophic level of 2.2. So, above us are carnivores. So, we are in between. So, both we eat plants and animals. So, it is in the omnivore. So 2.2 in the trophic level in the world food chain if you are going to check that. Okay, so who got correct? Yes, I know you can. It is easy for you. Okay, class, thank you for your answers. Okay, we will now move on to the next topic. This falls in our quarter 4, week 8. So this is the last and final. Then it is the end of the school year. So I know how happy you are because you can spend all time and what you wanna be, and what you wanna do in your life at home. Okay, so we will discuss the biogeochemical cycle. So any idea about biogeochemical cycle? Okay, so this is a functioning ecosystem uses both energy and recycling of chemical nutrients which is necessary for life. So energy enters an ecosystem from the outside. So when we say from the outside, then it is coming from the sun. Then it flows through it in one-way direction. So that was discussed in our previous slides, right? And then, as such, energy has to be constantly applied to an ecosystem. So chemical nutrients in the form of carbon dioxide. So try to follow the different cycles. Okay, so carbon dioxide, we have the water, oxygen, and other important minerals. So you have here the water cycle, the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, and the oxygen cycle. So they are very much important. So however, need not be supplied from the outside. So again, need not, no need not be supplied from the outside. So they are obtained from the physical environment. So what comes only from the outside is the energy from the sun. Okay, so I hope class it is clear. So then it flows through the ecosystem in a cyclical manner. So paulit-ulit lang yan. So thus, the balance in the ecosystem is present. So when we say balance, everything that is necessary that supports life in the ecosystem is functioning. So there is a balanced ecosystem, so material never lost, they are continually recycled to sustain life on Earth. Okay? Now, these are some examples and where human activities can harm the ecosystem. So have a look on the following or on the different pictures. So this is exactly or these are exactly human activities that can harm the ecosystem. So one is the population growth. So when there is population growth, then there is no more place or there is no more adequate place for the people to live and occupy the place. So what happened? Now, look at this forest. What do the people did? So they cut trees. So no more habitat for the organism that usually stays or live and survive in that particular area. Okay? Then people are killing animals. So I would like to remind you class that every living things you've seen on earth, they have their own purpose. They have its own purpose. Then you have here fishes. Over or exploitation of living things. And how about the other picture? Look at what happened to the forests. What they made to our forests. Kinalbo na nila. And others are even mining. Mining minerals, golds, and etc. So that are human activities in which they are really a big contributory factor in harming the ecosystem. So now, we will discuss the cycling materials in the ecosystem. Again, we have the cycle within the ecosystem, the water, the oxygen, carbon dioxide cycle, phosphorus, and nitrogen cycle. So, almost everything within an ecosystem is recycled. Water, carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus pass from the non-living environment to living organisms and then back to the environment. So for the water cycle, so class, I would like to let you recall your uh, water cycle lesson in your previous years. I know you already discussed this. So, water cycles, the water circulates around the environment. Water is the most important or non-living component of the ecosystem. Water is the most important non-living component of the ecosystem. So you can classify water as a non-living component of the ecosystem because water has no life at all, but water provides life to all living things. Okay? So non-living cycle involves condensation, precipitation, and evaporation. That is how water cycle goes. So living cycles involves plant and a process called transpiration. So water cycle, non-living portion, water vapor as it cools condenses in the form of clouds and falls to the earth's surface as precipitation. That is what you can see, the rain, the snow, and many others. And then water evaporates, turning from a liquid to a gas, and that will go back to the atmosphere and re-enters the atmosphere. Okay? Then water is absorbed by the roots of plants. Passing through the plant, the water evaporates from the leaves in a process called transpiration. This is a repeat. Okay, this is the diagram of the water cycle. So again, try to take a look, class, and please be guided on the arrow because that leads you to the direction as to where it goes. Okay, now let's move on to the next, which is the carbon cycle. So carbon is one of the major components of all living organisms. Carbon dioxide is the most available form of carbon for living organisms. So the process by which carbon from the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide is constantly cycled around the ecosystem. Okay? Okay, class. Carbon dioxide is in the air. So once it dissolves in water in a form of rain, is used by photosynthesizing plants, algae, and bacteria. So the moment nahuhulog na yung water sa surface, nagagamit na yan ng mga halaman, algae, and the bacteria. So that will serve as raw material to build organic molecules. So what does that mean? Autotrophs take in carbon dioxide to help make food in order to grow and survive. Ang kailangan lang ng plants na meron silang makukuha din nutrients for them to grow and survive, aside from photosynthesizing. Okay, now this involves respiration, wherein the breathing, where carbon dioxide is byproduct of animals, then combustion, the burning. Diba? Pag nagbe-burn, then automatically carbon dioxide is being produced and it is brought up into the air, into the atmosphere. Then erosion of our limestone. Okay? So I hope we are clear in carbon dioxide class. So we can move on to the illustration of how carbon dioxide cycle goes in. Okay, now we will move on to the oxygen cycle on Earth. So I want you to take a look on this, just a glance, how the cycle goes for oxygen. So again, try to follow the direction of the arrow. Okay, now we'll move on to the next cycle, which is the oxygen cycle. So oxygen, just like water, it is also essential for most living things. Animals breathe in oxygen from the atmosphere, and plants take it in through their leaves. So both plants and animals utilize oxygen during respiration to release the energy from food to power all life activities. So although both plants and animals take in oxygen at all times, plants use it up only at night. Remember that, class. In daytime, photosynthesizing plants release oxygen at a faster rate than they do in respiration. So have you ever noticed that when you wake up in the morning, anong nakikita niyo sa dahon ng mga halaman? Di ba may moist or may yamog? Yung tawag natin is yamog. So that is how plants do respire at night. So daytime, of course, photosynthesis. Kasi nakikita natin ang araw sa daytime. Okay? So this is the cycling of oxygen between respiration and photosynthesis helps maintain the constant level of oxygen in the air. Okay? So again, I would like you to remember, class, that during the day, plants undergo photosynthesis and release oxygen into the atmosphere as it is a waste product. So yung waste product ng plants, which is the oxygen in the air, that is also what humans and animals take in oxygen. Okay? So I hope this is clear when it comes to oxygen cycle in the environment. Okay, let's move on to the next cycle. We have the phosphorus cycle. So phosphorus cycle is another element present in the structure of living organism. So it is an important component of many biological molecules such as DNA as well as the membrane structure of the cells. So it is also present in bones and teeth of animals in significant quantities. So one of the major differences of phosphorus cycle with that of the carbon and that of the nitrogen is that phosphorus is not present in the atmosphere. So class, where do you think phosphorus is present? Okay, so phosphorus is embedded in rocks. Again, phosphorus found or embedded in rocks. Phosphorus compounds are released by means of erosion. Erosion of the rock where their compounds are dissolved in water. So nakahalo din siya sa water. So plants take in the phosphorus that they need in the form of water. Since the roots of the plant absorb water that contains already phosphorus, that is also for the plant to grow and to give more to absorb more nutrients. Okay, so animals obtain their phosphorus by consuming plants or another animal. So animal also consume a phosphorus by way of drinking water from the surface where there is water. And also the moment the moment the animals eat the plants, then automatically they absorb the phosphorus that was also present in the plants. Okay, so phosphorus compounds mixed in water are precipitated as deposits, which in turn are elevated by geologic processes, and this making it available to organisms. So we disrupt the phosphorus cycle by what? So try to think, class, how can this phosphorus be disrupted? Of course, again by human activities. Once you do the mining, phosphorus from the rocks necessary for the production of fertilizer will be reduced. The amount will be reduced in nature. So see how human activities really disrupt, no, the cycling of phosphorus. So what happened? Large amount of phosphorus that are sometimes washed away into streams. So nasasayang lang siya, nandoon lang siya sa streams. Instead of plants and other animals can benefit those phosphorus. Then napupunta lang siya doon sa rivers, then to the ocean that can also stimulate the growth of producers and sometimes upset normal chemical cycling in aquatic environment. Kasi pag sumusobra naman yun, then nakakasisira din doon sa dagat, and which are also harmful to the organisms that are found in the water. So it should be balanced. Everything should be balanced in this world. Okay? Okay, so we have here the phosphorus cycle. So class, please try to observe the flow. So use the arrow for the direction. Now we will proceed to the next, which is the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle is an essential component of the different molecules found in all living things. Okay? So used by organisms to build proteins and nucleic acid, part of DNA. Okay? So the DNA, which carries the instruction necessary for all life activities. So although nitrogen makes up almost 80% of the atmosphere, animals and plants, however, cannot use directly nitrogen. Okay? So since more organisms are unable to use nitrogen, fixing bacteria bind nitrogen with hydrogen to form ammonia. So these things will be converted into for us to use. So what does it mean? We need nitrogen, but we cannot use pure nitrogen gas. So certain bacteria convert this nitrogen gas into a usable forms of ammonia. So when this nitrogen is already converted into or forms of ammonia, then that's the time we can use this. Okay, so stages of nitrogen cycle, we have assimilation, which is the absorption of nitrogen gas by plants. Then ammonification, production of ammonia by bacteria during organisms. So it needs really to be converted. And when it when it is already in form of ammonia, then that's the time we can utilize nitrogen. Then nitrification, the production of nitrate from the ammonia. Then the denitrification, this is now the conversion of nitrate to nitrogen gas. Okay, so this is how the nitrogen cycle goes. So nitrogen cycles through the biosphere, bacteria in action. So human intervention in the nitrogen cycle, additional of nitrogen oxide and nitrogen gas in atmosphere from burning fossil fuels, also causes acid rain. So oxide, nitrogen dioxide to atmosphere from bacteria acting on fertilizer and manure. Destruction of forests, grassland, and wetlands. Add excess nitrates to bodies of water and remove nitrogen from the topsoil. Okay. So for the phosphorus cycles through the biosphere, cycles through water, the earth crust, and living organisms, the limiting factor for plant growth, impact of human activities, clearing of forests, removing large amount of phosphate from the earth to make fertilizers, erosion, leaches phosphates into streams, and many other more that are really contributory factor to the losses of phosphorus in the biosphere. Okay, then we have three big ideas. So, life is sustained by the flow of energy from the sun to the biosphere. So, the cycling of nutrients within the biosphere and gravity. So, some organisms produce the nutrients they need. Others survive by consuming other organisms, and some recycle nutrients back to producer organisms. So human activities are altering the flow of energy through food chains and webs and the cycling of nutrients within an ecosystem in the biosphere. So class, this is all I want you to put in mind how important the cycling of these all components that is very necessary or important in sustaining life on Earth. So, how do human activities affect the ecosystem? So, we have the monoculture. This is cultivation of a single crop in a large areas. Vast tracts of lands are converted to rice farms, sugar farms, and coconut farms. Okay, then the next we have the herbicide and insecticide. So farmers spray their crops with insecticides to kill insects, pests, and with herbicides to kill insects, weeds. So however, the chemicals also destroy other organisms, including beneficial insects and soil organisms, which help in the decaying cycle. So class, again, I would like to remind you how important every pieces or every single living things found in the ecosystem because they really serve its purpose. Okay, so another is a chemical fertilizer. Monocrops usually require large amount of chemical fertilizers. Continuous and uncontrolled use of chemical fertilizers may increase soil acidity. thus destroying soil structure. Fertilizers in water will cause increased growth of algae and other water plants. So if ever you will use fertilizer, then there are more organic fertilizer and which cannot harm in our products or in our environment. So please try to be advocate and using organic fertilizers. So now, how to conserve the environment? So we have here some desirable practices. So first is grow a variety of crops instead of only one crop. Use insects to fight other insects, and this is known as biological control of insect pests. Instead of chemical fertilizer, try organic farming using natural fertilizer for crops and some natural fertilizers such as compost and animal manure. Oh, this is now the last slides of our class discussion. But before I'm going to end, so students, I would like to remind you a few things or few words before you will go. Just do these simple things in which you can help protect or conserve the Mother Earth. So be an advocate of the clean and green programs or in the environment. Make use of the 3 Rs, which is the reuse, the reduce, and the recycle. So cut down on what you throw away, and if you consider that things can be or can still be useful, then reuse or make use of that, and educate your siblings or even your parents. If you notice they don't observe the 3 Rs, then you can be a good model or a good example of that. Volunteer or actively participate in community cleanups in your barangays. Then choose sustainable materials at home. Buy those products in which it is helping the environment or conserving the environment. So you can even plant vegetables, you can plant trees in your backyard. So these little things are simple things in which you can really do this, you can really practice this. It's a great help in saving and protecting our Mother Earth. So thank you again and good day to everyone.